guys, Wargamer Dad here, and welcome to another review of Imperium magazine. This week we're going to be reviewing issue 4. This one comes with the Scorpek Destroyers. And a full-size battle mat. Let me just get that out of the plastic so I can stop the rattle that. These are some big boys with some big bases. Obviously the bases being the most exciting part. And you get a little plasma dude. Sorry, he's called a Scorpek Plasma Sight. And he goes on a little 25mm base. I remember when everything was on 25mm bases. The destroyers go on these bases, which are massive. And looking at GW's website on my little laptop, they're coming in at $34.50 for retail, which means you're saving. What did we get? What that as? $30.50 minus $8.99. You're saving £25.51 off of the price of a new packet. Now, I did double check, and it does seem like you do only get 3 in the standard packet. You can get them a lot cheaper elsewhere. And sadly, there's a lot of copies of this already up on eBay and other places at $14.99 and $14.50. So if you want these, grab them while they're still in the shop. Maybe order them, maybe have ordered the local gaming store. But yeah, you're making a beautiful saving on these. Now, these guys are part of the sort of the latest iteration of Necrons. Necrons have been through several iterations, each one kind of getting better. The initial one was just skeletal androids, as I mentioned previously, came in the Space Crusade game. The second iteration of those were basically just better defined skeletal androids. By the third, they added some cool stuff, some individual units, but they were still basically a humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, just a bit cooler. But then in the latest iteration, they started really going, well, you know, you don't need arms and legs. You can build a body how you like and inhabit it. You've got guys that are basically tops on flying sort of jet bottoms and loads of weird guys. These guys are 3-legged guys, and look, a lot of the new Necrons, they're much more built to purpose. For example, if I put my hand there so it focuses, hopefully, you can see that there isn't a hand there. It's just a ball joint directly attaching to the weapon, which basically shows that these guys were designed for war and nothing else. They're not designed to have free will and hobbies or anything like that. They are built and live for one purpose, which is quite cool. We've also got some lead Belcher paint, which is a fantastic gunmetal paint. I'd recommend it for powder on me. Just been eating a bread roll. I'd recommend it for pretty much anything you're looking to do a decent gritty silver metallic on. You can get proper silver metallics, they always look too light. Whereas the darker gunmetal colours are actually very nice. And you're also getting another big battle mat. If you've got the previous battle mats from Conquest, which is the previous iteration, this is about the same size. And we'll tack on, and you can see on one side we have this lovely grey cityscape, which is very well defined. And on the other side we have this kind of Martian stuff, which is pretty cool. That's going to give you a nice big sized battle mat to play on. it is worth doing things like sellotaping the joints, which, if you're not aware, some of these battle mats, because they fold up, can get damaged. So it can be worth putting sellotape on the creases before they get damaged. Just gives them a bit of strength. As long as it's decent quality sellotape, cheap stuff will just peel off as you bend it. But you can see from, where are we? There you go. You can see from here, my one's already slightly damaged. It is a cardboard battle mat, so as you fold it and unfold it, it will get damaged. Don't expect miracles. It's still a very nice, thick quality cardboard mat that's double-sided and you can play on. It's not quite the 6x4 size you want, and even if you get the 3 of them, as you did with the previous thing, and line them all up to make one uber mat, it's still not quite the full size you want. And it can be worth remembering that with models, because it might not seem like much, but with charge distances and movement distances being practiced out on 6x4 tables or 4x4 tables, you can find that you might, if you're running just standard games, you might want to move your guys a little further back. I think the main thing to remember is most missions are 6 inches to 12 inches from the edge, which does mean that you've got 36 to 24 inches between the two opposing forces. And sometimes if you've got your own table, improvised stuff that you're using, or stuff that you've got like this, it can be worth remembering the distance between the enemy is really what's been play tested rather than the size of the battle mats. If GW's I've forgotten. I literally just forgotten what I just said about testing. If GW's practice test and game testing trolls and goblins are using on a 6x4 table, you're going to have a bit more maneuverability behind you. But a lot of the time, the distances you're looking at between the models when they start is what you really want to look at, really what you want to take into account, because it will give you, being inch or so closer with some decent dice rolls will allow you to charge maybe a turn earlier, even if it's just 2 inches. It shifts. You move 12. Well, depending on how long you move. If you move, if you've got something that moves about 12 inches and charges about 12 inches, it takes at least 2 turns before it gets into charge range. If somebody's got a gun line, so somebody's trying to stay back because they're Tau, they need those extra 2 turns. If you shorten it, you're shortening it to 1 turn, and or at least you're making it possible in 1 turn. And certain armies will suffer unnecessarily because of this. So what you really want to do is make sure that you're playing the game how the playtesters were playing it, because that's how a lot of it will have been balanced. Everything I'm hearing from issue 9 is saying it's actually a lot easier to balance, and they've done it. They've played it a lot of different ways because they're trying to bring it into more accessible tables and more realistic sized tables for homes. Back when I was a kid, everyone had a back room and everyone had a massive table in the back room. My family was by no means rich, but we still had a big enough table to actually play 40k on in a viable way. These days, houses are smaller and a lot of us can afford less. It's just the way of the world. Unfortunately, the rich get rich, the poor get poorer. And if you're unsure which you are, they'll shove you down into the poor bracket. However, if you do have a big enough table, absolutely use it. It's a lot of fun, having a full-size army on a full-size table. If you don't, use what you got. It's still a lot of fun. Back to the models. We have some fantastic models here. Let's have a look. copyright 2020, so these molds are less than a year old, which explains how fantastic they look. There is a lot of beautiful detail, and yet at the same time the models are reasonably simple and reasonably elegant. A lot of the Necrons are very spartan in their details. They're not covered in bags, they're not covered in pouches and extra weapons. They're built to do one thing, and they usually do it well, and the models are kind of streamlined to really give you that effect. You're not going to get too many spare bits and pieces for these models. They are push fit, which means you can stick them together without gluing them, and it also means that if you've got alternative weapon loadouts, you can work with both of the weapon loadouts. These guys, I've got a big arm. Sorry, no, you've got two. Yeah, that's yeah, two single arm loadouts, two different looking single arm loadouts, and one two-handed loadout, which is all very cool. So you can play with them. These guys are push fit. The GW one describes as having 2 units, both elite choices available to the Necrons. And if I have a quick look, they seem to be the same thing, so I'm not sure what they mean by that, whether the Scorpek Destroyers and the Hex Mark Destroyers are there. There's some big hand-to-hand weapons. I don't see... No. I don't see the other things, so it may be the reason the GW's one is so much more expensive is because you're getting a bunch of spare parts with it. So I'm just going to look closer at I'm just going to go out of frame for a bit. The Hex Mark Destroyers are showing the same... Sorry, the Scorpek Destroyers are showing the same... the same sprue as this. If I just shift over to the Hex Mark Destroyers, they are not showing a sprue at all. Or are they? No, here you go. Here's a sprue. And they're showing, yeah, that's showing a different sprue. But the sprue's half as big with a lot of wires. So I suspect, and it's only £21. Weird. Yeah. I suspect the reason these cost a lot more on GW's website is because you're getting extra options that you're not getting with this. So the saving is going to be probably a lot less. However, even the other destroyers are only £21. So and with the cost they're going on the internet being approximately £20 to £21, in some cases 27, I'm seeing, you are still saving a lot of money with this, particularly if you want the Scorpeks. Sorry, the Scorpeks. It is worth noting that this does seem to be a way that GW are getting rid of a lot of the single I can't even speak. Of a lot of the single pose models. So I'm having some Tourette's issues, and maintaining control of my face does take a bit of concentration sometimes. But yeah, GW seems to be using these magazines to clear out a lot of the single pose models, particularly the ones that are generally considered slightly less favourite. This doesn't mean you can't convert them, and it doesn't mean they're actually worse models. It just tends to mean that whatever the meta is when the packs first come out tends to may mildly favour the other one. So everyone who's doing competition lists will build the other one. And by the time you're getting these, that meta is almost certainly going to have changed. So for all you know, it may be these ones that are now the best, or it may not. But at the end of the day, if you're collecting this, you're looking to build it on a budget, or you're looking to get some extra options cheap. So the money you're saving more than makes up for any loss in tournament edge. And frankly, they're Necrons and Space Marines. They're still going to be fantastic, whatever you pick. Right. So, onto the magazine. got some beautiful imagery on the front, making these guys look particularly chunky and badass. This guy's carrying a gun, a claw, and something else, which doesn't actually seem to be an option on the models. And this guy looks massive compared to the models. I don't know if he's something different or a leader variant. He looks very reminiscent of the old ABC Warriors from Judge Dredd. If you don't know what those are, look them up. It's one of the few things that the Sylvester Stallone film got right. Covered in hair as well. And it's a fantastic looking thing. Why wouldn't you take inspiration from it? And it has, in my opinion, allowed GW to shift their models a bit away from Terminator, which was possibly, allegedly, the inspiration, I think is the way they put it, for some of the early androids. Some of these square heads, particularly in the artwork, might be inspired by some of the 40k stuff. But then again, that's what GW do. They take your fantasies and they let you play them as a game. That is their shtick. It always has been. Sitting there and going, oh, their stuff's similar to other stuff, at this point is kind of late in the game to call that. And if you're upsetting their IP, if you're upset that they sue everyone for their IP, that's how business works these days. If you don't like it, vote for people who'll change it. Unfortunately, one of the issues you get with a lot of business practices by a lot of companies is they are stuck on a certain route because everybody else goes on the same route. And unfortunately, it often falls to the lowest common denominator. If every other company is going to protect their IP, you kind of have to protect yours if you want a profitable company. Now, there are a lot of small companies that do different stuff, but they don't always last. And as a company, you've got a responsibility to A, your shareholders, and B, more importantly, your employees, to keep going. And whilst I think we all agree it's a little cheeky, I do kind of feel it's the system, not the players that's at fault with that. It's one of the reasons I still collect GW, because whilst they may do things that are reminiscent of other guys or copying of other guys, or seem like they're copying other guys, and they may sue people to copy them, that's the reason they're still around, to sell models. Although, in all fairness, there are a load of other systems out there that are brilliant, and I do collect a lot of those as well. So, it's just one of those. It is, unfortunately, when you're talking about influences and you're talking about this came from this and this came from that, and certain ideas are certainly reminiscent of, for example, Frank Herbert's Dune. You have to take into account the situation of those are the people you're dealing with. This is what that company started off doing and has always done. GW have always been about making other people's fantasies become a reality. It's what they started off doing. They started off doing D&D and a D&D magazine, which was a way of making fantasy novels and cool comic book stuff be playable as a game. Whether you're thinking of Lord of the Rings or Thongol the Barbarian, which is a legitimate name for a barbarian, is a legitimate name for a book series, or whether you're thinking things like Space Marines seeming to be influenced by the colonial Marines from Aliens. That was, to a certain extent, the point of it. It was to allow you to take these fantasies and make it a reality. And in order to maintain profit, these days they end up having to sort of protect their IP. It's an unfortunate situation, but I mind to a certain extent, but to a certain extent, it brings stuff like this out, and I really can't complain that, you know, GW are able to bring a lot of stuff that I really like and a lot of us really like to the table. As long as they're not like hurting people, which a lot of other companies do things that actually do. It's do I wish the whole gaming industry were a lot more open and a lot more lovely and a lot freer? Yes. Do I understand why it's not? Yes. But back from my little IP rant, and by the way, that doesn't mean I think IP laws make sense. IP laws are just crazy shit. We've got these fantastic little guys, these Scorpek Destroyers, who are described as deranged Necron killers. Unfortunately, because there is no grammar there, it doesn't specify whether they are deranged Necrons who kill or whether they kill deranged Necrons. Who knows? I'm noticing on my camera with 20 minutes before I even started page 1. Brilliant me. It gives a brief description of what they are, which I'm not going to go through. It does specify they're the mental ones. So they're pretty cool. Looking at them, yeah, these guys are purebred killers. The weapons are locked into their hands because they desire nothing else but killing things. It's got descriptions of the weapons, which are hyperphase threshers. These blades vibrate across dimensional states. You might recognize that as something similar to the Catan phase weaponry, which is wielded by A, the Catan, and B, certain assassins of the Imperium. So you've got some pretty cool stuff here. It goes on to describe things like sentient energy. A plasma site injects corrupted engrams with its monomolecular proboscis. Engrams usually describe memories, but that's a bit weird. Maybe that's what they are. I'm not going to go into too detail. Don't want to spoil it for you. We've got another fantastic little sheet. As I said, laminators are cool. If you can get a cheap one, great. If you've got one you can borrow, great. If you haven't, your local B&Q and your local stationery shops will often have clear plastic you can stick over them. Make sure to roll the bubbles out, but then you can write on these dozens of times and then throw them away, or you can just stick them in A4 ring binder sleeves and do the same. Next we've got creation of a space marine. Got a little bump here. Creating a space marine is no easy task. Every one of these superhuman warriors is a product of agonizing surgery, psycho-indoctrination, and decades of brutal training. It is a process so horrific that few survive. Such are the sacrifices mankind must make to defend the Imperium. Yeah. They are... Give me a second, guys. Anyway, they are massively warped creatures, sort of gargantuan, with a certain level of gigantism. They have like thicker heads, thicker hands. They're like Andre the Giant, only bigger and better proportioned, unfortunately. But it is such a massive change that, according to the law, it kills a lot of them. Or is rejected, and so on and so forth. And the reason, apparently, that they use younger kids or adolescents is that adolescents can better survive the change. And according to some of the backgrounds, the reason that the old Thunder Warriors were so insane was because the change is so painful and so mentally disrupting, and the hormone production gets permanently skewed to the point where what you get is an insane berserker that wants to kill everything. As opposed to a balanced warrior, which is why A, the Thunder Warriors were then replaced, and B, the Emperor then killed all the Thunder Warriors, because yeah, he didn't know how long it was going to be till they found planets, and they were just too violent to keep around without a war to burn them on. But betrayal is betrayal. One of the things this also lends itself towards is the idea that you produce genes. A Space Marine must produce gene seed more than once in its lifetime. A lot of the stuff goes on about how it's harvested from dead Space Marines, and whilst that's certainly one way, if they're having such numbers of attrition, they must have another way of producing gene seed, or Space Marines must produce mature gene seed, and that can then be taken out and another set grows and another set. Otherwise, the legions would have whittled themselves down to less than a chapter size, and there wouldn't be chapters. Certainly by this point in the game. Obviously, that doesn't include the Primaris Marines. They're fully manufactured and can be built from scratch by core. But the other Marines were still fairly numerous already, and whilst eventually they're probably going to get replaced by the Uber Marines, there's still thousands of them around. It then goes on to give you a nice little description of how they're made. It describes the aspirants and the Primarchs and what those are, the apothecaries and the gene seed. I'm just going to read that. Gene seed is the raw genetic material used to create the organs and implant them within aspirants. Each Space Marine has 2 internal organs which must be collected to grow new implants. As a Space Marine chapter's gene seed is the most precious resource, it is carefully monitored by the apothecaries, who must ensure that it does not become damaged. So each Space Marine is capable of producing 2 more Space Marines, which sounds good until you realise they can't possibly collect all the Space Marines' gene seed in battle, particularly because some other Chaos chapters steal it, and they must lose a lot of it in the process of making new Space Marines. So in theory, they must have a way of topping up. And in addition to that, they send a tithe of their gene seed to the Imperium, which is kept, stored, monitored, and can be sent back out to top them up when they've suffered massive losses. So if they're sending regular genetic ties to the Imperium, that's taking some as well. So there has to be more. Then we've got, I'll show you a picture, you've got some cool stuff there. Then we've got the warp, destinations and demons. You have an Imperial ship there, which is the most technologically advanced looking Imperial ship I've seen in a long time. There you go. There's the Mechanicum symbol on some saying that looks a lot more advanced than most Imperial ships. It's a Mechanicum ship. There you go. The normal ones look more kind of old-fashioned ship-like. A lot of people sort of query that. I mean, the reason for the kind of almost upside-down ship-like prow is to deflect asteroids and the like, but it still is very reminiscent of ships, so I kind of just hold it to being inspirational. It looks like a ship to a normal bloke who lives in the 20th century. Probably makes it easier to accept as a spaceship. We've got a bump here as well. I shall read this. The warp is a dimension of pure energy that exists outside the fabric of reality, known also as the Imperium, and the Imperium, and the Sea of Souls, amongst other ominous names. I don't know what accent this is. It is at once utterly essential to the existence of the Imperium and the most deadly threat to humanity. Obviously, haven't been in a room well fired. This gives you a brief explanation of the warp, what it is, how they use it and that, and gives you an idea of how dangerous it is. We've got a picture of a navigator on the next page. These guys are psychers who are genetically bred, if you will, through a selective breeding program, in the same way that dogs are bred to have certain aspects and certain traits. The navigators are bred to have the one eye, not to be confused with astropaths that are harvested from worlds and are dangerous psychos. These guys are perfectly safe and sanctioned by the Imperium. That's how you know they're safe. And not one blink of their unseeing eye away from destroying the entire ship. It then goes on to describe the Astronomicon, which is a beacon of energy. Well, it's basically the Emperor. He produces so much psychic energy that you can see him from across the galaxy, with the problem that you can't for the Imperium Nihilus, the Dark Imperium. It goes on. It also describes the denizens of the warp, which includes demons, but also includes lots of other weird things. And he also goes on to describe the Blackstone, a mysterious obsidian-looking substance that can be used to enhance or negate the power of the warp. In the region of space known as the Primaris Nexus, the Necrons have used Blackstone to create a network of towering pylons that appear to hold back the energies of the Imperium. These structures have rendered warp travel and communication in the Primaris Nexus almost impossible, as well as preventing demons from taking form in this region of space. If you're familiar with the lore, you've watched previous episodes, you'll recognise that from Abaddon's 13th Crusade. There were also weird black pylons on Cadia, which apparently were enough to hold the entire Eye of Terror at bay and stop it from becoming what it's become now, which is a great rift across all of the galaxy. So, that technology is particularly badass. Then we've got your how to build. Importantly, read your clip of safety, otherwise you might cut yourself off from the neck down. And importantly, get yourself a set of flat-headed clippers, because a lot of the Necron stuff is quite fine and quite delicately built, and you're going to want to clip it out or very gently cut it out. It goes on about things like lining up. I find with the push fits, sometimes you have to trim a little bit off the end of the nodes. If you want to glue it, you can. If you don't want to glue it, you don't have to. If you want to push fit it to try it in and out, a tiny bit of oil can be useful if you're looking to take it apart again. Which if you're looking to use multiple weapon loadouts and you want to disassemble it, making sure the little plastic pins, which I shall attempt to show you here. Lots of holes, can't see any pins. Yeah, you can see here's a little nub. If I put around there, that should focus better. See, there's a little nub there. That should be fairly easy to go. It's go in and out. But if you get any longer ones, sometimes just trimming the end of it and just a tiny bit of oil, like just the amount you can fit on the tip of a blade or a pair of tweezers, can be useful if you're planning to take it apart again. Because once you push them together, they do go very solid. Sometimes even with a bit of oil, it stays stuck together and it's difficult to get apart. And particularly again with the delicate Necron ones, once you put it together, you may break it if you try and take it apart again. I personally prefer to glue them because of that. It makes it a little more solid. Other people think it's better not to glue them because if they get knocked, it means they'll come loose apart. Try it out, you do you. Okay. Then we've got the building there. More building. These guys are fairly complex, and there's 3 different models. So to make it easy for you, they will give you nice instructions. If you're having to force something together, it probably doesn't fit. Gives you a good rule of thumb, or it doesn't fit the way you're pushing it. Then you've got the Canoptek guy, who's a much simpler build. They're then going on to build instructions. Rune Lord, they're recommending Rune Lord Brass for the initial colour. You give it 3 coats of that, that'll get you that kind of orangey, orangey metallic. And then for the weapons and some of the other bits, they're recommending the lead Belcher. With Necrons, there's no real right or wrong way of painting them. You paint them how you like, but the metallic way is probably the quickest and easiest. You've also got some paint advice here for adding some details to your Space Marines, which is nice. Not so much story this time, but that's because the build and paint section is a bit more complicated. This week you've got Destroyers Awaken. Got a nice build up with your new battle mat, and you've got some scenery which, if you collected the last Conquest, you might actually have some of that scenery. You've got data sheets for the Necrons and some added stuff for the Primaris Lieutenant, including weapon skill and attacks, and a mastercrafted power sword, which is cool. Some brief descriptions, a nice little how to charge diagram there. And you've got another nice mission here. This mission is... Let's have a look at that again. They are using the whole map, it's just a small portion of the picture here. But it has the units charging and fighting each other, which is pretty cool. You may notice that they've made the units blue and green for ease of use. One of the other reasons they've done that is because some of the newer playing sets are actually now multicoloured. It doesn't change how the game works. It doesn't change how the models look. It just makes it easier and to identify what's going on and keep models unpaintable. You get stuff fixed, and when you put stuff together, your other guys look more uniform and cooler while you paint them. Sorry, losing my voice, but I'm still recovering from the cold I had last week. They've gone on a bit on how multiple wounds. There are loads of ways of doing it. Some people will put how many wounds the model's taken. Some people will put how many wounds the model has left. There's no right or wrong way. And it just runs you through. Runs you through the game. And that's a nice nifty game. Looks reasonably well balanced, and you've got some cool stuff with it. The inside back page again is encouraging you to subscribe. It still can be worth it at this point because you're still getting more stuff. And cool stuff with the subscription. It's showing us what we get next month. Oh, that is good. Anyway, I'm going to cover that. First off, you get a Primaris Captain. Primaris Captains are good. They have some better skills than the Lieutenants and provide a lot of support. Both the Captains and the Lieutenants, and even the Sergeants to a certain extent, are badass models by themselves, but a lot of what they bring to the game is the support, is the ability to reroll attack dice on ones or to wound dice on ones, initiative or morale tests and all kinds of stuff like that. Having these character models and having them positioned safely amongst or behind your men so that they can sort of extort them to victory is incredibly good and incredibly useful. They're not just a cool model anymore. And after that, my favourite models, Primaris Aggressors. I actually have 3 units of Primaris Aggressors already, and I don't care if I'm getting a 4th or a 5th. They are big, they are chunky, they are nasty. These guys come with flamethrowers. Chances are it's the single post version, so all you'll get is flamethrowers. We might be getting the ones that have the heavy bolt guns, but frankly, the heavy bolt guns are useful, but I am just a little bit in love with the flamethrowers. I have to check out the rules for them on that week. But if they still do the if they still do what they did in previous editions, they'll be awesome. One of the best tactics in 8th Ed was to flame throw your enemy and then allow them to charge you, because they charged you. Instead of rolling sixes to hit, you just roll D3 hits for each guy. So you could flamethrower, have them charge you and create a wall of flame, and then hit them with badass guys because of the way initiative worked between units. If your opponent didn't choose to attack them first, you could have them attacking. So you could end up with a round of flame throwing, the enemy charging you, a reaction set of flame throwing, and then punch the enemy. Yeah, the enemy might get to shoot you, but they were fairly tough. But and if you'd want them in big units. But it was a weird little tactic that apparently was quite successful, or at least it was for me, depending on the unit that was charging you. If it was a charge specific unit that had flamethrowers or pistols themselves, you could lose out. But if it was something that had mid-range weaponry and couldn't fire it and charge, you could end up really doing a lot of damage before you even started. But that's what's going on, and that's what's coming in the next couple of weeks. Hope you guys enjoy it, and as always, if you want the Necron stuff, subscribe to the channel, put a comment in the comments, and it doesn't have to be much, anything will do. Hello, yo, whatever you want. And these could be winging their way to you free. If you like the channel, as always, please share it with your mates. Please subscribe, and I will see you next week.